webinar on building a successful automated campaign. So this is actually a re-recording of the webinar, but we'll go through everything that we covered in last night's session. So first of all, I want to go through a presentation that we put together, all about automation and what we're going to cover within this actual webinar. First thing I want to draw your attention to is our great knowledge base, our success center. So basically this is where you can find all the different videos that we've done, some great resources, guides, everything that every bit of information and knowledge that we have on InTouch, we put onto this. So by all means, please check it out. It's a great place for information. And we'll be hosting this video on there as well, and future webinars also. Also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We push a lot of content out, a lot of information that can help you do a lot more in your business and achieve a lot more using the system. So by all means, if you don't follow us already, please follow us on them now. That's me, Matthew Rowe, Customer Success Director for InTouch. So I'm going to be taking you through covering off automation over the next hour, and hopefully you'll find it useful. So what are we actually going to cover? Well, we're going to find out why you should actually use automation. It's a buzzword that's around a lot at the moment. Everybody's talking automation this, automation that. But why? What is it? How can we use it, and how can you use it within your business? Then we'll look at the first steps, which are planning. Quite an important thing. And you'll hear me say planning throughout the webinar quite a lot because it is key to it all. We'll then look at actually building the automated campaign. So rather than just talking the theory, let's actually build it and go through the process. We'll then look at a few helpful tips, so a few things that we found out along our journey of automation. We'll then have a Q&A session, so we'll review some of the questions from last night's live webinar, and then we'll have the final thoughts. And what we'll also do then is we'll let you know when the next webinar is, so we'll be running these on a regular basis. So let's get cracking. So why use automation? Well, it's quite simple. Automation is there to help you drive your business. So whether that results in a financial gain or a financial saving. Because at the end of the day, what a lot of people focus on with automation is it's all about email. It's all about communication. It's all about those touch points. Well, actually, automation doesn't have to just be about those external things. It could be an internal thing. So it could be that you have tasks in there that it smooths over some of your processes that you do internally. So you've got all these different options there about automation, but the whole point is that it's either to make you money or save you time and ultimately save you money as well. So that's what we'll be looking at today, and we'll look at a few examples of how you can actually build those structures. But as I said, the first step in all of this is about planning. So it's about how you actually go about planning how you're going to get from A to B. So it's the most vital thing. As they say, fail to plan and to fail. So automation, because you can chop and change people, you can move people throughout the system and throughout the sequences. Unless you plan it carefully, you can get very confused, you can get a bit lost, and worst of all, the customer at the end of it could be bombarded with multiple emails and different communications because they've clicked on something and all of a sudden it's actually these 10 different things. So planning is key. Now, to share some tools with you, one thing that I use is called Gliffy, and I've put the website there. So Gliffy is a tool that you can use to make flowcharts. Really simple. If you've got Google Chrome as well, then you can use it as a node and you can use it on your desktop because it's an online application. But it's something that I use to really help me get into working out our automated campaigns. You've got Microsoft Visio as well, another piece of software to help you do flowcharts. Or you've got the good old pen and paper, of which you can get them from Staples or other good retail stores. So the whole point is that no matter what you do, no matter what you use, plan it, draw it out. If you're like me, I'm quite a visual person. I like to see what I'm doing. I like to see everything planned out so I can then step back from it at times and say, well, that doesn't quite work. So what you can then do is actually set your goal out. So before you start drawing your plans, you can actually then have your goal, and you want to know where, what's at the end of it, what's your ultimate aim, because you can work backwards and you can start to help people work towards where you want them to be. So having a clear, defined goal is a really important thing. Now, whether that goal is just to keep in contact with customers, so whether it's you're doing a membership service or something like that, where people sign up for 12 months, so you have this sequence of dropping them emails every month religiously, or whether it's to actually target based upon their actions. So one of the ways of actually kicking automation off, and we'll have a look at this in a bit, is by actually the user doing an action, the user open up an email, the user clicking on a link, anything like that that can trigger off another action and put them into an automated campaign. If somebody clicks on a link for a product or service that you offer, we'll put them into a campaign that then targets them and sends them more information about that service or that offer. So you've got that. You can mix it up that way. Or you can even use it to promote an event. So whether you're doing business networking, whether you're actually running a charity event or anything like that, you can have people register, and using the day-based automated campaigns, you can then say, well, 1 day before send this, 5 days before send this, 10 days before do this. Actually, 1 day after the event, do this. 10 days after the event, do this. Now, those can actually be defined on any of the text, on any of the date fields within the system, or you can actually set a key date in the middle. But once you've got your target, well, you've got to think about who you're going to communicate out to. So how are they going to get into your filter? But who are you communicating with? Are you just going to put everybody in it and hope for the best and hope you get something out of it? Or are you going to be very targeted because they've come into it from an action? They've come into it because they've completed a form. So knowing who you will communicate with and knowing where they've actually come from and how you've actually added them is key. Because again, you can start to formalize this plan that actually says, you know what, if they fill out this form here, I want to put them into that campaign. But by the way, if they then click on that link within that campaign, I want to send them off to something far more targeted. So knowing who they are and where they come from is quite key to you achieving your goals. Because otherwise, if you're just going to put everybody into the same one, then you're just wasting an opportunity there, because the whole point of automation is to help you get really laser focused in what you're going to achieve and what you're actually going to do. But I can't stress how important planning is. Draw it out on a piece of paper, on the back of a notebook or anything like that, just so you get the structure right in your head. You don't have to write the content, but it does help if you have the whole goal in mind, and then you work backwards and you start to formulate that whole plan, and that process is absolutely key. So as I said, once we get through the planning stage, and I'll continually mention planning through all this because it's the most important part, I actually want us to now look at actually building this. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen now. So as if by magic, I'm already in the automation section. So how I got here is by clicking on automation on the left-hand menu, and then I get the option to actually create a new automated campaign. So I'm going to click on that, and straight away it's going to give me an option to give it a name. And this is where, again, name it something relevant. Don't just have it automated campaign 1, campaign 2, campaign 3, campaign 4, because you'll actually just get lost. By the time you've built all these things up according to your plans, you'll end up not knowing which one's which. So you want to call it something relevant. So I'm going to call this one Webinar March Automation. So I know exactly what it is then. So I know it's about a webinar, it's in the month of March, and it's about automation. Fantastic. The next thing you want to do is select, well, what type of automation is it going to be? Is it going to be linear, or is it going to be date-based? Now, a linear one is just one email after another, after another, after another. It starts off at A and ends up at Z. So therefore, you can follow the process all the way through. A date-based one, as I mentioned a minute ago, fantastic for events. So with the date-based one, you can either pick a date field in the system, so date of birth. So fantastic. You put somebody's date of birth in, and you could actually then trigger off an email a week or 2 weeks before their birthday to send them a little reminder of, why don't you come in on your birthday and we'll give you a 10% off voucher, or anything like that, or even MOTs, for car garages. If your MOT is due in 12 months' time, capture that date, use that date to then trigger something off. Or if you're running an event, so for instance, my networking group, for networking, in Western-super-Mare, we have a big meeting on the 14th of April where we have people from all around the country coming in. So for that, we could put the 14th of April as a key date and start to send emails beforehand to remind people to come to that meeting, as well as sending them an email automatically afterwards to say, hey, thanks for coming. So having a date-based one has its merits there as well. But today, I'm going to look at a linear one. So let's have a look and let's create the campaign. So the next thing it does is it takes me straight into actually adding a step. Now, for anybody that's looked at automation before, nothing's really changed here. The fact is that you can put your time delay, so you can say, well, when is this actually going to trigger off? So one of the key things here is that knowing where you're going to get that information from, or knowing where you're going to get that contact from. So for instance, in my mind, my plan for this automated campaign is to bring the people in from a web form. So I know that I'm going to put a squeeze page out there on the internet and get people to sign up to something, to get my newsletter, to get more information from me, to buy my services. So therefore, they're going to come in from a web form. So obviously the first thing I want to do is when they come in from that web form, and we'll have a look at how we create that web form in a second, because there's a few cool things that you can actually do with it. So what I want to do is when they sign up via that web form, I want to send them something immediately. And I want that action to actually be an email. So you think of the process. Think about when somebody signs up to a web form, it's great to get an acknowledgement. It's great to get a thank you for signing up. If you're offering them a voucher, well, your first email will be that voucher. So whatever you want to do, you can select the action. And my first action is going to be to send something immediately, and that something is going to be an email. I get the option to pick an email campaign that I've already created, or I can create a new one. So I'm going to just create a new one for the time being. And I'm going to whiz through this because actually how you go about putting the content in is entirely up to you and what that content actually is. The key things I will draw your attention to is that the process here is exactly the same as when you build a normal email. So you give it a campaign name, and again, this will be the name of your step. So I could call it step 1. Nice and simple. The subject line, on something a little bit more personalized. So I can then personalize that subject line, give it something, call it something relevant. I know it's going to come from one of these particular email addresses, and I can simply say, all right, I'm happy with that, and I can move on. And this is where you can then pick a template from the system or a past email you sent. I'm just going to pick a very basic template because I'm not going to put any content into it apart from a link. So I'm just going to simply click to edit the content here. I'm going to highlight that text, and all I'm going to do is simply go www.bbc.co.uk. Nothing fancy, but I'm just embedding a link behind it, and that's quite key because it allows me to do something else in a second. But I'm going to quickly save that, and then I'm going to move on to the next step. So I'm going to proceed to the new automation section. So within a normal email campaign, you'll get the option to do some automation. And this automation is either based upon people clicking on a link or opening an email. So when you do it from a normal email campaign, so just a one-off email, you get the option to say if they open this email, then add them to an automated campaign. Whereas within this sequence, I just get the ability to say, well, if they click a link, then do something. So because I've embedded that link behind some text, so there's a little explanation here for anybody that understands code. You've got to embed it. You can't just leave it can't just type into the content www.bbc.co.uk. You have to embed it behind something because you get the proper code in. So it gives me that link, says, well, we found these links in your email. Fantastic. And now it gives me the option to either add it to an existing campaign that I might already have running, or I can actually say, I need to create a new one from that. So, you know what, let's create a new one. And I could say, I could call it BBC Link Clicked, or I've already got one called that by magic. So this means that if anybody clicks that link within this email, they will get put into that campaign. So that will kick off different actions. Make sure you press the plus button so you know that that's been accepted, and then you can simply finish. And the whole point then is that I've now completed my first step. I can go back and review it. I can change the subject line or anything about that email, but I'm happy with it, so I'm going to click return. So thinking about the process, straight away, I've got people coming in from the website. I've then got this one action that's going to kick off immediately when a contact is added. Great. It's going to send them that email, which is a thank you email. I'm tracking the link in there, so I get all of normal stats as well. And by the way, on each of the email campaigns that you actually put into this, you still get the full report. So you can still go in and see who's opening what they're actually doing with it. So have no fear there. So in my plan, I've got them coming from a web form. I've got them then going into this sequence, this automated campaign, which then sends them off one email that says, thank you. Brilliant. But I want to do more there, and I can do more there. So I'm going to add in another action. Now, the actions that I can actually add in now, besides email, I can actually create a task. So I could say, you know what, this person's signing up for my newsletter, or that they're registering an inquiry on my website. I want to set a task for myself to follow up. So follow up on new squeeze page lead. So this is somebody coming into my website, filling out the form, and they're going into this process. So I want to then create the task, give myself 2 days to follow up, or even just give myself 1 day to follow up because I don't want to miss the opportunity. You can assign it to somebody. So I'm going to assign it to Rob from Unreal Homes because this is our demo account, and I can save. So thinking about the process, now what I've done is when somebody comes to my website, they go into my database. That's the first thing. So it saves me time actually putting their information in. It then puts them into the sequence. And the first thing in the sequence is to send them an email that says, thank you for signing up. So I'm acknowledging the fact that they've signed up. The next action is it's going to generate a task for me to remind me to pick up the phone and speak to them. Great. It means I don't have to scribble on the back of a notepad saying, don't forget to call this person tomorrow. The system's going to create that for me, and it's going to remind me. But I want it to do more now. So what can I get it to do? Well, I'm going to add in a new action. And again, I'm going to leave this action to be immediate because I want the system to handle a lot of things for me. So the first thing is, it's a new inquiry. It's a potential lead. So I'm going to create a lead for it. So as soon as this person signs up, the system is then going to create a lead for me. So I'm going to leave it as a lead. I'm going to assign it to say it's going to be managed by me. Give it a title. So this is new websites leads. The potential value, well, I'm just going to estimate that it could be £100. It's entirely up to you. That's all based around you and your business. The source, well, I'm going to say web form, so I know where it's coming from. Days until to close it, well, this all relates to you and your sales process. So if you know that you, on average, close deals within 3 weeks, 10 days, whatever, it's entirely up to you. You record that in there. So this is saying, when am I actually going to bring that business across the line? So I'm going to say 15 days. I'm going to give myself 15 days to close this, and I'm going to put it into the new inquiry pipeline stage because that's the first one on the ladder. So I'm then going to save it. The key thing here then is, again, thinking back to my overall plan that I know that this person's coming from a web form. It's going to then put them into my system. It's going to then send them an email. as a thank you. It's going to create me a task to follow up and to speak to them. And it's also going to create a lead in the system for me. So it's going to start to organize things quite nicely without me actually doing anything. I've just set this up, but what's going to action this is somebody filling out a form, somebody saying to me, I'm interested in what you do, can you speak to me? All of a sudden, this is all going to happen, but I want a bit more. So I'm going to add a new action here. And my new action is going to happen immediately as well. And this is where I'm going to sort my database. So I'm going to start to segment people based upon them coming in via this particular web form. And how I do that is I select actions and I go add to group. So I can either add them to an existing group or I can create a new group. So I'm going to create a new group here. So it's going to be squeeze page 1. So that's the form that I know they're going to fill out and they're going to come into my system from. So I'm going to put them into that group. So I've segmented them based upon where they've come from. So I click save. So straight away, when somebody fills out a form, they not only go into my system, they get sent an email. So I'm already connecting with them to say, thanks for signing up. I get a lead created as well. So I'm tracking the business or the potential business that's coming from it. I also then get a task created to remind me to follow up, to give them a call. And I'm sorting my database out because I'm creating them as a group. Now, the other things that you can do here are adding in more follow-up emails, so more information emails, so that you can start to warm them up as you go through. You could actually send them a text message as well in a few days. But straight away, if I had sent them a text message now, as well as sending them an email, for me personally, I would be over communicating with them. It's entirely up to you what you think. But this is why you need to plan it quite carefully, because of the fact that if you don't plan it, there is a danger that you will over communicate with people. And that's not something that you want to do. It's not something we want you to do. And it's certainly not going to be something the customer's going to want you to do. So it's, as you can see, it's very, very easy to actually add steps in. And they don't actually have to be all about email. They don't all have to be about communicating. You could actually have an automated campaign which actually just has one step that says, if somebody fills out this form, or again, knowing where your customers are coming from, if you manually add them, you can have an automated campaign that says, look, add them to this automated campaign, send them this email, but actually I want you to add them to this group, and I want you to remove them from this other campaign. So there are other actions here that actually remove people from groups and remove people from automated campaigns. So therefore, rather than you over communicating with people, you can actually say, well, you know what, take them out of that one campaign and put them into this one. So you start to see how you can chop and change and keep track of everything really simply. But the question is then how to get people into this. And as I said, my plan for this particular one is to do it from a web form. So let's go and have a look at web forms. So for web forms, you go to Setup and More along the top, and then you go to Web Forms. And this is where you can then generate as many web forms as you want. So I'm going to simply click on Create Web Form, and I'm going to talk you through the process. And one thing you should notice from the system is that it's a very step-by-step process. So therefore, you start at step 1 where you do the basics, you give it titles, right the way through then to the finished article at the end where it gives you code. So I'm going to give this one a name, and I'm going to call this one Squeeze Page 1, because that's going to be the same name as my group, so therefore the two match up. It's going to relate to my web form app, my automated campaign as well, so therefore it all matches up. You can then set a success and an error URL. So these are quite important because the success URL basically says, hey, thanks for signing up. Everything was successful. Here's your voucher. Here's this, here's that. So it's a positive acknowledgement that what they've done has worked. The error URL basically says, oops, there's something wrong here. Don't forget to fill out the form again and make sure that you give out all your details as the form requires. Now, one way to actually add people into this automated campaign is by using the section here. So you have a list of all of your automated campaigns here, where you can then simply go and select which one you want them to go into. So really nice and simple. So I know that the one I want it connected up to is going to be webinar March automation, because that's the one that we've just created. That's the one that we know the steps are to send them an email to a group, create a lead, and create a task for me. Really nice and simple, all in one action. So if they complete this form, they're going to go into that. Or I could select a different campaign, or I can actually select to add them to a new one and create that new one right here, right now. So I've added that one. Perfect. So I'm going to save and I'm going to continue on to the next step, which is where I actually build my form. So rather than having that old long list of every field, basically we've got this nice short one where you can simply select the different fields that you want and quickly add them to it. Now, one of the key elements here, let me just select email address, because obviously that's going to hinder my sequence if I don't have an email address. But one of the things you can do here, and this is our test account for a kitchen and bathroom company. So one of the things that I can do is I can select the custom field, so installation site for instance. And when I add that one, you'll notice there's actually another little icon here. So that means that I can do something else. So I'm going to click on it. And what this means is that because this is a custom field, which is actually a radio button, so it's got limited options in it, so you can be one or the other, it's going to allow me to do something. The two options in the custom field are the design and build and DIY installation. So if I select, or rather if my contact selects design and build, I can then add them to an automated campaign based upon their actions. So, like I said, automated campaigns aren't all about the emails. They aren't all about sending people things. I could be putting them into one automated campaign that actually just has a group there that is called design and build. So it segments my database. So from one person filling out that one form, they go into my main automated campaign, which I know has an email. It adds them to a group to say they've come from this squeeze page, sends me a task, creates a lead in my system. But I could also add them to this automated campaign that basically says, well, they've selected design and build. So put them into the design and build group. So I've segmented based upon their actions on what they have said. Now you could work this out quite cleverly. And again, this is where planning comes into it. Because what you could actually do is you could not put them into an automated campaign just for filling out the form, but you could say, well, actually, if they select option A, put them into this custom automated campaign. So you start communicating with them on their level with what they actually want. And you can just simply add that in. So I can say, well, design and build, put them into the annual service dates. And if it's a DIY installation, we'll put them into the BBC link clicked one. So obviously I'm not putting them into relevant ones, but it just shows you how easy it is to then segment your database and do things based upon their actions, just by clicking that little icon. Once you're happy with all of that, you can then click back. And what this will then show is that you've got all your fields there, but that little icon now shows a 2 because we've connected it with 2 options. We've done a couple of things here. I can then whiz through the rest of the form and say, well, who do you actually want to be notified when people actually fill out this form? So I can add that email address. And then I get right the way through to step 4, which is the code. Now, there are 2 types of code. There's the automatic. So basically, the automatic code, you put that onto your website. Every time that page is actually loaded, it grabs the latest form. So you can chop and change and you can edit the form in the system, knowing that it'll be pulled through. The manual code will allow you to actually style it better as well. So because you've got all that other code in there and you can actually have that visibility, you can then pass that to your web designer, who will then actually be able to use CSS and other things to actually style it. But the key element here is, now that I've built that form and I've put it onto my website, what I've got to do is I've got to go back to automation, and I've got to actually go into the campaign that we created. I've got to click Start, Because there's no point in me having that form on the website if I haven't clicked start on the automated campaign, because people will fill it in and nothing will happen. I'll be a bit awkward. So you've got to make sure that you start it. And one of the good things about these campaigns is the fact that you can continually edit them, you can continually add steps to them. And providing the person hasn't moved past it, so for instance, if I signed up to this 6 months ago and it's triggered off all these actions, and then I say actually add another action in that triggers off after 2 weeks of them being added in, send them this email. Well, if I've already been in it for 6 months, I'm not going to be sent that email, so there's no danger of them being bombarded with old emails. The other way of actually putting people into this is not only through the contact page and actually a little drop down there that says add to automate campaign, but from an actual email campaign. Again, in the same way that I created the email within the system, and I then created a link within it in the actual content. So with this one, again, I've got the link to the BBC website. In the automation section, again, like I showed you, this is where you can say, well, actually, click on the BBC link, put them into this campaign. But within a normal email campaign, you also get the option to say, well, actually, if they've opened this email, then put them into this campaign as well. So again, it's another way of you funneling people into these sequences. But this is where planning comes into it, because whilst you don't have to plan it to the nth degree, it does help to know where they're coming from and what your end goal is and how you're going to navigate them to that end goal. So really nice and simple. There's no tricks about it. It's just a really simple way of being able to warm people up, communicate with people, but also keep track of your own internal actions. So what we're going to do now is we'll just have a quick look at a few helpful tips. So these are the few things that we've put together from using automation ourselves, but that we've also learned along the way. The first is to test and measure different ideas. So don't just have one campaign that just sits there and just rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls. Push a few more out there. The fact is that when you create an automated campaign, you have a simple button that says duplicate. And the fact that you can duplicate it means that you can then have each of the steps there, but you can then simply tweak it. You can change the subject line. Something as simple as that could get you better open rates. It could get you better results at the end of it. So don't be afraid to test and measure things. Be relevant. So if you're getting people in from a website sign-up form, then for instance, if I did the Unreal Homes one, so bathrooms and kitchens. So if I started to talk to them about garage conversions, it's not really relevant. The business is bathrooms and kitchens and refitting those, not changing the garage, not building an extension and a conservatory. So be relevant. Make sure that what they sign up for is what you deliver to them. By all means, diversify. So, add into the emails, we also do X, Y, Z. And those links can be trackable. So therefore, it puts them into new automated campaigns, because if they click on, oh, actually, I am interested in garage conversions. Okay, well, start sending them information on that. So the main message should be relevant, but you can diversify. You need a call to action. You need your company details in there, because you want them to pick up the phone. You want them to speak to you. So don't hide away. They've signed up. They've given you their information so you can use, and you're using it with automation. But you know what? Give them something back. Give them value. Give them your details. And I mentioned the word value there because I was jumping ahead of myself. But make sure then that any automation build provides value for you and the customer. So what a lot of people will think is that, oh, it's all about sending stuff to the customer. It's all about that. Whilst it is to a certain extent, it's also about value to you. So it's about you creating processes that save you time, that help you create more opportunities and help you convert more business. So it's not just about the touch points with the customer. It's about you providing more value to streamline your processes in your business. Don't overcrowd things. at the end of the day, you can have multiple campaigns kicking off and working. So therefore, the danger is that all of a sudden you start sending 20, 30 emails out to people because they filled out one particular form or they clicked one particular link. Think about it. This is again where planning comes into it, because you need to make sure that things don't overlap, and if they do, then they overlap by a very small amount. Put yourself in the customer's point of view. Are you going to be over communicating? Is that going to annoy you? Are they then going to actually unsubscribe because you're sending them too much information that in 5 days' time, when you're going to send them that all signal dancing email that they've been waiting for, that's got the killer deal in, they're not going to see because they've unsubscribed, because you've bombarded them from every angle. So again, make sure you plan, make sure you avoid overcrowding. Plan your next step. Again, plan, it seems to be the buzzword that I'm using at the moment, but make sure you have a next step plan. What happens when somebody gets to the end of the automated sequence? What do you want to do then? So make sure you plan your actions and plan your next moves. Like a game of chess, you need to think 2, 3, 4 moves ahead. This is probably why I'm not a great chess player, but make sure you plan your next step for your marketing and your automation. Okay, so we had a Q&A session during the call, and let's have a look at some of the questions. So, can you organize a campaign to be triggered when a contact is added to a group? It was one of the questions that we were asked. Now, my response to that was, why don't you add them to an automated campaign that has one of the steps as an actual action to add them to a group? Really nice and simple. Can they be put in time-related offers, and that offer change in relation to when they joined the campaign? Was the question as well. The answer to that is, at the moment, we don't have dynamic content, so therefore it's not going to update based upon what the date is or what the time is. So at the moment, no, but it's a nice idea, so it's something we might look at. Can you actually look at reporting for individual steps? Yes, you can. So by going into the automated section, you actually get to see each email's report. So therefore, you can still go in and you can still see your normal stats of open rates and click-throughs and things like that, and who's actually doing what. So the same as you'd expect on a normal email campaign. Okay, so let's move into final thoughts. So my final thoughts on automation is one of planning. I've repeated it time and time again. You might be bored of hearing me say it, but planning is key because of the fact that there aren't a lot of restrictions on automation. So we don't say, well, you can only have a campaign and you can only have one link that feeds it or one form that feeds it. You can do whatever you want with it. And with that comes a lot of potential stumbling blocks, but also there's major rewards to be had with it, not just from saving time and buying you time effectively, because your processes get a lot smoother, but by also then helping you convert more business. So that's my final thought, is plan it and then execute it. So next webinar, we've already booked it for the 1st of April, so no jokes, it will be after 12 midday, so we won't fall for any of that. But we'll be running it around about the same time, so 7 p.m. GMT on the Wednesday. So hopefully you can join us, and that's going to be on leads and sales to get more bang for your buck and helping you build your sales pipeline. So there's a link there of how to register, and we'll be emailing that out also. I just want to draw your attention to the Success Center again. So again, this is where we'll be putting all the videos of webinars or resources. So this presentation will be going up there as well. So make sure you do check it out and check out some of the other resources that are available to you there. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn as well. We push out some fantastic content. Didier and Greg, our marketing people, do a great job scouring the web and putting the information down, not just on how to use our system and everything like that, but there's some information on QR codes and a few other different bits and pieces that go out. Some real thought-provoking stuff that can help you kick things on to the next level. And finally, just a thank you, really. So thanks for joining. Thanks for actually taking the time to watch this webinar. As I said, we will be running them on a more frequent basis, and we look forward to inviting you and interacting with you all then. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.